Hello and welcome to English in Advance. My name is Jessica and I am so happy you are here with me today. Have you ever felt that your English is trapped inside your head? And you can read English articles. You can understand movies and podcasts. But when it is your turn to speak, your mind goes blank. The words just disappear. Or maybe the words come out slowly, awkwardly, not at all like the smooth, confident sentences you hear in your mind. If this sounds familiar, I want you to know something very important. You are not alone. This is one of the most common and frustrating challenges for English learners all over the world. It's the gap between knowing the language and using the language. Today, we are going to close that gap. This isn't a grammar lesson. We are not going to memorize lists of vocabulary. Instead, we are going on a journey. We will explore how to train the two most important tools you have for speaking English, your brain and your mouth. We'll do this by sharing stories. Stories of people just like you, who faced these same challenges and found their way through. Their experiences will be our map. We will learn their secrets, practice their techniques, and by the end of our time together, you will have a new way of thinking about speaking English. You will feel more confident, more capable, and more ready to let your English out into the world. So find a comfortable place. Take a deep breath, and let's begin our journey on how to train your brain and mouth to speak in English. Let's start with a story about a woman named Maria. Maria was a baker, and she wasn't just any baker. She was an artist. In her home country of Brazil, her cakes were famous. People would line up outside her little shop for a taste of her passion, fruit mousse cake, or her rich, dark chocolate brigadeiros. When Maria moved to the United States with her husband, she was excited to bring her passion for baking to a new country. She enrolled in English classes and studied hard. She watched American cooking shows for hours every day. She understood everything. The famous chefs on TV would say things like, "Now you're going to want to gently fold the egg whites into the batter to maintain that light, airy texture," and Maria would nod along, picturing the process perfectly in her mind. She knew the vocabulary: whisk, spatula, sift, knead. Her receptive skills, her ability to listen and understand, were fantastic. She and her husband opened a small bakery in a friendly neighborhood in Chicago. The smell of fresh bread and sweet pastries filled the air, and soon people started to come in. This was the moment Maria had been dreaming of. But then, something happened that she didn't expect. A customer came to the counter, a kind-looking woman with a warm smile. She pointed to a beautiful strawberry tart and asked, "Hi there, can you tell me if this is made with fresh cream?" Maria froze. It was a simple question. She knew the words fresh and cream. In her head, the answer was clear. Yes, we make it fresh every morning with heavy cream and a little bit of vanilla. But her mouth wouldn't work. Her brain felt like it was full of static. She searched for the words, trying to build the perfect sentence in Portuguese first and then translate it. The silence stretched on. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds. The woman's smile started to fade a little, replaced by a look of confusion. Finally, Maria just managed to nod her head. Yes. The woman bought the tart and left. Maria felt a wave of shame and frustration wash over her. She ran to the back room, her eyes filled with tears. "I am a failure," she thought. "I can understand everything, but I can't even answer a simple question. What is wrong with me?" She felt like all her hard work studying English was for nothing. She knew the language, so why couldn't she speak it? Maria's experience is something many English learners feel. It is called the silent period. This is a very natural and very important stage of language learning. Think of it like this. When you learn a new skill, your brain needs time to absorb and process a huge amount of information before it's ready to produce anything. Imagine you wanted to learn how to build a wooden chair. First, you would watch videos, read books, and study diagrams. You would learn about different types of wood, the tools you need, and the techniques for cutting and joining the pieces. You might spend weeks or even months just learning, just absorbing information. During this time, you haven't built anything. You are in a silent period of chair building. You are building the foundation in your mind. Learning a language is the same. Your brain is busy building a complex network. It's learning new sounds, new grammar rules, new sentence structures, and thousands of new words. It's like building an entire city of information in your head. This process takes a lot of energy. And while your brain is busy with all this construction, speaking can be very difficult. Your brain is focusing on understanding the input, on making sense of the new world of English you are exposing it to. It doesn't have the extra resources to easily produce output, which is speaking. Maria thought she was failing, but actually her brain was succeeding. It was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. It was preheating, just like her oven. An oven needs time to reach the right temperature before you can bake a perfect cake. If you put the cake in too early, it won't rise properly. Maria's brain was preheating with all the information from the cooking shows and her English classes. Her frustration came from trying to bake the cake before the oven was hot. So what can we learn from Maria's story? First, be patient with yourself. If you are in a phase where you understand much more than you can say, don't panic. Your brain is not broken. It's working incredibly hard for you. You are building your foundation. Trust the process. This period won't last forever. The more you listen and read, the stronger that foundation becomes, and the easier it will be to start building the house of spoken English on top of it. Here is a small practice for you. Think about a time in your English journey when you understood a conversation or a scene in a movie perfectly, but you knew you couldn't explain it yourself. Take a moment to remember that feeling. Now, instead of feeling frustrated about it, I want you to change your perspective. Say to yourself, that was my brain working hard. That was my brain building its foundation. Acknowledging this silent work is the first step to overcoming the frustration. You are not stuck. You are simply preparing. Just like Maria, your oven is heating up. Soon you'll be ready to bake. Now let's travel from a bakery in Chicago to a small apartment in Austin, Texas, where a young man named Leo was trying to teach his fingers and his mouth a new kind of music. Leo was a guitarist from Spain, and his fingers could dance across the strings of his flamenco guitar. He could play fast, complicated rhythms that told stories of passion and joy and sadness. Music was his first language. When he moved to Austin for a job in tech, he was excited to learn English and dive into the city's famous live music scene. He found that learning English grammar was like learning music theory. It made sense. There were rules and patterns, just like musical scales and chords. But when he tried to speak, he hit a problem. It wasn't just his brain that struggled. It was his mouth. He noticed it especially with certain sounds. The T sound, for example. In Spanish, there is no sound quite like it. When he tried to say words like think or thee or three, his tongue felt big and clumsy in his mouth. It felt wrong. He would try to put his tongue between his teeth as his teacher told him, but it would either come out as a D sound like dink or a T sound like tree. He felt incredibly awkward, like his mouth didn't belong to him. One evening, he was practicing a new, very difficult guitar piece. There was one chord that required his fingers to stretch in a way that felt completely unnatural. His hand ached, and the sound was dull and ugly. He tried again and again, and for a long time it seemed impossible, and then it hit him. This feeling, this physical awkwardness and frustration, was exactly the same feeling he had when he tried to say the th sound. He realized that speaking English wasn't just a mental exercise, it was a physical skill. His mouth, his tongue, his lips, his jaw, they were all made of muscles. And just like his fingers needed to build strength and muscle memory to play that difficult chord, his mouth muscles needed training to produce the new sounds of English. For years, his mouth had been an expert at producing Spanish sounds. It was in great shape for Spanish. But for English, it was a beginner. It was out of shape. This was a huge breakthrough for Leo. He stopped thinking of his pronunciation problems as a failure of his intelligence and started thinking of them as a physical training challenge. He was no longer bad at English sounds. He was simply in training. He approached it just like he would approach learning a new guitar technique. He started doing exercises. He would stand in front of the mirror and just watch his mouth as he slowly tried to make the sound. He would exaggerate the movement, sticking his tongue out far more than necessary, just to feel the position. That, this, those. He would say them over and over. He also started reading aloud every day for just 10 minutes. He chose a simple book and read it slowly, not focusing on the meaning of the story, but on the physical feeling of forming the words. He paid attention to how his lips rounded for W, how his tongue tapped the roof of his mouth for T and D, and how his jaw dropped for vowels like ah. He also discovered tongue twisters. At first, he felt silly, sitting alone in his apartment saying, "The 33 thieves thought that they thrilled the throne throughout Thursday." But he thought of it as a musician playing scales. It was a workout. It was repetitive and maybe a little boring, but it was strengthening the muscles and building the coordination he needed. Slowly but surely, things began to change. The th sound started to feel less foreign. His mouth began to move more easily between different sounds. His speech became clearer and more fluid. He wasn't perfect, but he was no longer fighting with his own mouth. They were finally on the same team, playing the same song. Leo's story teaches us a powerful lesson. Speaking is a physical act. Your mouth is your instrument. If you want to speak English clearly and confidently, you need to train that instrument. Many of us focus only on the brain, on grammar and vocabulary, and we forget that the mouth needs attention too. We assume that because we know how to talk, we can automatically produce any sound. But every language has its own unique set of sounds, its own music. Your mouth is trained to produce the music of your native language. To learn English, you need to teach it a new kind of music. So how can you start training your instrument? Let's take a page from Leo's book. Here is a practice for you. First, find a mirror. We're going to practice one sound together, the American R sound. For many learners, this sound is tricky. In many languages, the R is rolled or tapped with the tip of the tongue. In American English, the tongue doesn't tap anything. The sound comes from the middle of the tongue. Look in the mirror. Open your mouth a little. Now, I want you to say the sound E, like in the word see. E. Notice where your tongue is. The sides of your tongue are touching your top teeth and the tip is down, behind your bottom teeth. Now, while still looking in the mirror, slowly pull the middle of your tongue back, as if you're trying to make it fatter in the back of your mouth. Keep the tip of your tongue down. As you pull your tongue back, the E sound will change into an R sound. Ear, ear. Feel that? That's the American R. Now let's try it in a word. Car. Start with the ka sound, then pull your tongue back into that R position. Car. How about river? River. Feel the muscles in your tongue working? This might feel very strange at first, just as it did for Leo. But by doing this kind of focused, physical practice for just a few minutes each day, you are building muscle memory. You are training your instrument. Pick one English sound that is difficult for you and make it your project for the week. Watch videos of native speakers making the sound. Practice it in the mirror. Read a list of words with that sound out loud. Be a pronunciation athlete. Train your mouth, and your brain will have a much easier time expressing itself. From the physical challenge of sounds, let's move to a mental challenge that happens inside our heads. Let's meet Kenji, a software developer from Japan who was visiting New York City for the first time. Kenji's English was quite good on paper. He could read technical documents and write emails with no problem, but speaking was another story. One afternoon, he decided to explore Brooklyn. He took the subway, but he got confused and got off at the wrong stop. He found himself on a busy street he didn't recognize, with no subway station in sight. He looked at the map on his phone, but the GPS was acting up. He knew he needed to ask for directions, and his heart started to beat a little faster. He saw a woman walking towards him and decided to ask her for help. And this is what happened inside Kenji's brain in the space of about 10 seconds. First, he thought of the question in Japanese. Sumimasen, kono chikaku ni chikatetsu no eki wa arimasu ka? Excuse me, is there a subway station near here? Then he began the slow, careful process of translation. Sumimasen becomes excuse me. Okay, that's easy. Kono chikaku ni means near here. Okay. Chikatetsu no eki is subway station. Wa arimasu ka is the question part. Is there? So he pieced it together in his head. Excuse me, near here is their subway station. It sounded a bit strange. He rearranged it. Excuse me, is there a subway station near here? Okay, that sounds correct. He took a breath, ready to speak. He opened his mouth, but as he did, his brain started double-checking everything. Is a subway station correct, or should it be the subway station? Is near here the most natural way to say it? Maybe around here is better. This internal debate, this frantic translating and perfecting, took only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. By the time he finally said, "Excuse me, is there a subway station near here?" The sentence came out in slow, disconnected pieces. The woman was kind and patient. She understood him and pointed him in the right direction. But Kenji felt exhausted and embarrassed. The process was so mentally draining. Later that day, sitting in a park, he watched a mother with her young child. The child, who was maybe 4 years old, dropped his ice cream cone. He looked at his mother, pointed at the fallen scoop on the ground, and said with a sad face, "Ice cream fall down." It wasn't grammatically perfect. An adult might say, "My ice cream fell down." But the message was 100% clear. The child didn't translate from some other language. He saw a thing happen, and he used the English words he knew to describe it. He connected the idea of the ice cream and the idea of falling directly to the English words. There was no middleman. There was no translation. This was a profound moment for Kenji. He realized his biggest problem was not his vocabulary or his grammar. It was the translation process. He was treating his brain like a slow, inefficient translation machine. Every time he wanted to speak, he had to go through this 3-step process. Idea, arrow, Japanese arrow, English. The native-speaking child used a 2-step process. Idea, arrow, English. That was the secret. He needed to fire the translator in his head. So, Kenji started a new kind of practice. He decided to try to build a direct bridge between ideas and English words, bypassing Japanese altogether. He started with simple things. When he was walking down the street, he would look at objects and name them only in English. Tree, car, building, stop sign, dog. He wouldn't allow himself to think of the Japanese word first. He would see the physical object and connect it directly to the English sound. Then he moved on to actions. As he was making coffee in his hotel room, he would narrate what he was doing in simple English. "I am opening the packet. I am pouring the coffee into the cup. Now I am adding hot water. I am stirring the coffee." The sentences were basic, but the process was revolutionary. He was thinking in English. He was connecting his actions, his direct experience of the world, to the English language. This process of thinking directly in English is one of the most important shifts you can make on your journey to fluency. Translating in your head is like trying to swim with heavy boots on. It slows you down, makes you tired, and feels unnatural. When you start connecting your thoughts and observations directly to English, you are taking the boots off. Your speech becomes faster, more spontaneous, and much less stressful. Of course, you can't switch to thinking in English overnight. It's a habit you have to build gradually. Kenji started with naming objects. Let's do that together right now. This is your practice. Wherever you are, I want you to look around you. Find 5 things in your environment. I will give you a few moments. Okay, now I want you to name those 5 things out loud in English. Don't think of the word in your native language first. Just see the object and say the English word. For example, if I'm at my desk, I might say, computer, mug, pen, lamp, notebook. You try it. How did that feel? This simple exercise is the beginning of building that direct bridge. You are training your brain to see the world through an English lens. Start small. Do this for 1 minute every day. Then, like Kenji, you can move on to narrating your actions. I am washing the dishes. I am walking to the bus stop. It doesn't have to be complicated. The goal is to create moments in your day where English is the only language in your head. By doing this, you are firing that slow internal translator and hiring a much faster, more direct connection to the language. Let's move on to our next story, which takes place in a busy coffee shop in Seattle. Sophia, who had recently moved from Italy, got a job as a barista. She was a quick learner and soon memorized all the different types of coffee drinks. She knew the individual words: latte, cappuccino, espresso, milk, sugar, large, small. Her vocabulary was growing every day. However, when it came to taking orders, she struggled. A customer would come up and Sophia would say, "Hello? What you want?" She was translating directly from Italian, and it came out sounding a bit rude and unnatural. Or a customer would say, "Hey, let me get a large non-fat latte with an extra shot." The speed and the string of words would overwhelm her. She would focus on the individual words, large, latte, but she would miss the flow of the request. She was trying to build every sentence from scratch, word by word, like putting together a piece of furniture with hundreds of tiny screws. It was slow and frustrating. She noticed her American co-workers spoke differently. They didn't seem to be thinking about individual words. They used a kind of shorthand. When a customer came, they would smile and say, "What can I get for you?" Or, "What are you having today?" When someone ordered, they would repeat it back using phrases like, "So that's one large latte." They had a collection of ready-made phrases for every situation. One day, a regular customer came in, a friendly man named Tom. Sophia was nervous as he approached. He smiled and said, "I'll have the usual, please." Sophia panicked slightly. She didn't remember his usual. Her co-worker, Sarah, overheard and stepped in. "You got it, Tom. One large black coffee coming right up." Sarah then turned to Sophia and said, "Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. Most people are creatures of habit. You just have to learn the chunks." Chunks? Sophia had never heard that word used for language before. Sarah explained, "We don't think word by word. We think in chunks, in phrases. What can I get for you is a chunk. Coming right up is a chunk. I'll have the is a chunk. It's like a recipe. You don't think about each grain of flour, you just think 1 cup of flour. These phrases are our cups of flour." This was a revelation for Sophia. She'd been collecting ingredients, individual words, but she didn't have any recipes. From that day on, she changed her learning strategy. She started listening for these chunks, for these common phrases. She kept a small notebook behind the counter. When a customer used a phrase she didn't know, she would write it down. She collected phrases like, "Can I get a..." "I'd like to have..." "I'm in the mood for..." "Do you guys have..." "Just a splash of milk, with room for cream." She started practicing these chunks. When there were no customers, she would say them to herself. "What can I get for you? What can I get for you?" She practiced the melody and rhythm of the phrases. Soon she started using them with customers. The first time she said, "What can I get for you?" and a customer responded easily. She felt a huge surge of confidence. She wasn't building the sentence anymore. She was simply selecting the right recipe from her cookbook of phrases. Her interactions became smoother, faster, and much more natural. She felt less like a foreigner trying to speak a language and more like a barista simply doing her job. She learned that fluency isn't about knowing the most words. It's about knowing how to use the most common patterns of phrases. It's about learning the chunks. This idea of language chunks, or collocations, is incredibly powerful. Native speakers don't invent new sentences every time they speak. They rely on a massive mental library of these pre-assembled phrases. This is why they can speak so quickly and effortlessly. They are not thinking about grammar rules or word order. They are simply pulling a chunk from their memory. When you learn good morning, you don't learn good and morning separately. You learn it as one unit of meaning. You need to apply this same logic to thousands of other phrases. For example, we say make a mistake, not do a mistake. We say take a picture, not make a picture. Make a mistake and take a picture are chunks. Learning them together is much more effective than learning the individual words. Let's do a practice together based on Sophia's discovery. We're going to learn a very useful chunk for polite requests. The chunk is, I was wondering if you could. This is a very common and soft way to ask for something. It's much more gentle than saying, can you, or I want you to. Notice it's a chunk. We don't think about the grammar of I was wondering. We just use the whole phrase as a single block. Now, let's add to it. Think of something you might need help with. For example, help with directions. So you could say, I was wondering if you could tell me how to get to the train station. Try saying that out loud. I was wondering if you could tell me how to get to the train station. Let's try another one. Imagine you are in a store and you need a different size. You could say, I was wondering if you could help me find this in a medium. Now it's your turn. I want you to complete the chunk. I was wondering if you could. With a request of your own. It can be anything. Maybe, I was wondering if you could speak a little more slowly. Or, I was wondering if you could pass the salt. Take a moment and create your own sentence. Say it aloud. By practicing with chunks like this, you are learning the language in the same way native speakers do. You are building your own recipe book. So start listening for these chunks. When you watch a movie or listen to a podcast, pay attention to the phrases that people use over and over again. Write them down, practice them, and make them your own. You'll find that it's much easier to bake a cake when you have a good recipe. From the world of coffee shops, let's enter the world of theater and meet David. David was from Poland and he was a passionate amateur actor. He had joined a local community theater group in Chicago. The group was putting on a famous American play, and David was cast in a small but important role. He was thrilled, but also terrified. He had been learning English for years, but he had a strong Polish accent. He was worried that his accent would distract the audience and make his performance unbelievable. He memorized his lines perfectly. He knew every word. But when he rehearsed with the other actors, he could hear the difference. Their speech had a certain music to it, a rhythm, an intonation, a rise and fall of the voice that his speech lacked. His English was flat and monotone in comparison. He was pronouncing the words correctly, but he wasn't capturing the melody of the language. His director, a patient woman named Eleanor, noticed his struggle. One afternoon, she took him aside. "David," she said, "you know the words, but you need to find the music. I want you to stop just reading the lines. I want you to start shadowing." David had never heard of shadowing. Eleanor explained that it was a technique where you listen to a native speaker and you repeat what they say at the same time, like an echo or a shadow. "The goal is not to understand every word," she explained. "The goal is to copy the speaker's rhythm, their pitch, their pauses, and their emotion. You are not imitating their words. You are imitating their music." She gave him a specific task. She told him to pick one of his favorite American actors and find a short 1-minute monologue from one of their movies. His task was to become that actor. He chose a scene with Al Pacino. The first time he tried it, it was a disaster. He couldn't keep up. He was stumbling over the words, and he felt ridiculous. He was trying to listen, process the meaning, and speak all at the same time, and his brain felt overloaded. But he remembered Eleanor's advice. Don't focus on the meaning. Focus on the music. So he tried again. This time, he didn't try to understand the monologue. He just listened to the sounds. He listened to the way Pacino's voice got louder and faster, and then suddenly dropped to a quiet whisper. He listened to the short, sharp pauses he used for dramatic effect. He put on his headphones, closed his eyes, and just focused on the melody. He started again. He played the clip and started speaking along with it, a split second behind. This time he wasn't saying words, he was making sounds. He was matching the rhythm. He was copying the intonation. He did it again and again and again. For 20 minutes he just shadowed that 1-minute clip. Then he tried saying his own lines from the play, and something amazing happened. The words felt different in his mouth. They had more life, more energy. He found himself naturally adding pauses, stressing certain words, and varying the pitch of his voice. He had absorbed some of the music. He had internalized the rhythm of American English without thinking about a single grammar rule. He was feeling the language instead of just thinking about it. He continued this practice every day. He shadowed movie scenes, podcast hosts, and news anchors. His accent didn't disappear completely, but it softened. More importantly, his speech became dynamic and engaging. When opening night came, he delivered his lines with a confidence he had never felt before. He wasn't just speaking English, he was performing it. David's story shows us the incredible power of shadowing. It is one of the most effective techniques for improving your pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation, what we call the prosody of a language. It trains your mouth to move in new ways, as we learned from Leo's story, but it also trains your brain to recognize and reproduce the musical patterns of English. It connects your ears, your brain, and your mouth in a powerful feedback loop. This is a practice that you can start today. It requires no special equipment, just your phone and a pair of headphones. Here is how you can do it. First, find a short audio or video clip of a Native American English speaker. It's important that the person is speaking clearly and at a moderate pace. A podcast, a TED Talk, or an audiobook is a great place to start. Let's say you choose a clip that is 1 or 2 minutes long. Step 1. Just listen. Listen to the clip once or twice without doing anything else. Get a feel for the speaker's voice and rhythm. Step 2. Listen and read. If you have a transcript, read along silently as you listen. This helps you connect the sounds you are hearing with the words on the page. Step 3. Shadowing. This is the main event. Play the audio again and this time speak along with the speaker. Try to start at the exact same time or just a fraction of a second behind. Don't worry if you miss some words. Don't worry if you don't understand everything. Your only job is to copy the sounds, the rhythm, and the intonation as closely as you can. It will feel weird. You will probably feel silly. That's a good sign. It means you are pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Do this with the same short clip for 5 to 10 minutes. Repetition is key. After a few days of shadowing the same clip, you will be amazed at how much more naturally it flows. Then you can choose a new clip and start again. Think of it as learning a song. You listen to it over and over until the melody becomes a part of you. Shadowing helps you make the melody of English a part of you. Let's now turn our attention from the world of acting to the world of engineering, and a brilliant woman named Anya. Anya was from Germany, and she was an exceptional engineer. She could solve complex problems and design elegant solutions. Her mind was sharp, logical, and precise. When her company transferred her to their office in Austin, Texas, she was confident in her technical abilities. Her English reading and writing skills were nearly perfect. But speaking in meetings was a nightmare. Anya had a deep-seated fear of making mistakes. In her work as an engineer, a small mistake could have big consequences. A miscalculation could lead to a system failure. So she was trained to be perfect, to check and double-check everything. She applied this same mindset to speaking English. Before she would say anything in a meeting, she would construct the sentence perfectly in her head. She would check the grammar, select the most precise vocabulary, and rehearse it silently. The problem was, by the time her perfect sentence was ready, the conversation had moved on. Someone else had already said what she wanted to say, or the topic had changed completely. She would sit in meeting after meeting, silent with brilliant ideas trapped in her mind. She felt invisible and stupid, even though she often knew more about the topic than anyone else in the room. Her perfectionism was paralyzing her. One day, there was a big meeting about a major project that was having problems. Everyone was stressed. The head of the department, a man named Dave, was leading the discussion. Dave was American, a native speaker, and a very respected leader. In the middle of explaining a complex issue, Dave said, "Look, there's many reasons why this is failing. We need to look at all of them." Anya's brain immediately flagged an error. Dave had said, "There's many reasons," which is grammatically incorrect. The correct form is, "There are many reasons." Anya waited for someone to correct him, or for the earth to stop spinning, but nothing happened. Nobody in the room even blinked. They weren't focused on Dave's grammar. They were focused on his message, on his ideas for solving the problem. They were focused on communication. This was a life-changing moment for Anya. It was as if a spell had been broken. She realized that her goal of grammatical perfection was not only unrealistic, it was also unnecessary. Even native speakers made mistakes, and nobody cared. The purpose of language, especially in a professional setting, was not to be perfect. It was to communicate ideas, to solve problems, and to connect with people. Her obsession with perfection was actually preventing her from communicating. In the next meeting, Anya decided to try an experiment. She had an idea about the project. Normally, she would have waited and tried to form the perfect sentence. This time, she just took a deep breath and spoke. She said something like, "Maybe the problem is not in the software, but in the, how you say, the data we are inputting." The sentence wasn't perfect. She had to pause to search for a word, but her point was clear. Her manager turned to her and said, "The input data? That's an interesting point, Anya. Tell us more." For the first time, she was part of the conversation. It was terrifying, but also exhilarating. She realized that making a small grammar mistake was a tiny price to pay for being heard. Anya's story is a powerful reminder for all of us. The fear of making mistakes is one of the biggest barriers to fluency. We are often our own worst critics. We imagine that everyone is listening for our errors, judging our grammar. But the truth is, most people are just listening to what we have to say. They are interested in our ideas, our stories, and our perspectives. Communication is the goal, not perfection. Mistakes are not a sign of failure. They are a sign that you are trying, that you are learning, that you are growing. Every mistake you make is a learning opportunity. It is a necessary step on the path to fluency. You cannot learn to ride a bike without falling off a few times, and you cannot learn to speak a language without making some mistakes. So here is your practice, and it's a brave one. I want you to embrace imperfection. This week, your mission is to have one conversation in English where your only goal is to communicate your message. That's it. Give yourself permission to make mistakes. If you forget a word, don't panic. Describe it. Use your hands. Use a simpler word. If you use the wrong tense or the wrong preposition, don't stop and correct yourself. Just keep going. Your goal is not to have a perfect conversation. Your goal is to be understood. After the conversation, take a moment to notice how you feel. You might realize that the world didn't end. The person you were talking to probably didn't even notice your mistakes. And you were able to express yourself. You were able to connect. Freeing yourself from the prison of perfectionism is one of the most important things you can do for your spoken English. Be brave. Be imperfect. Be heard. For our next story, let's meet Carlos, a young man from Mexico living in a small town in Ohio. Carlos worked from home as a graphic designer. His life was quiet. He didn't have many opportunities to interact with people, especially native English speakers. He felt like he was on an island, surrounded by an ocean of English that he couldn't access. He would watch American TV shows and listen to podcasts, but it was all one-way communication. He needed to practice speaking, but he had no one to talk to. Carlos was also a passionate online gamer. He loved playing a team-based strategy game that required a lot of communication and coordination. For years, he had played on the Latin American servers, speaking Spanish with his teammates. One night, an idea sparked in his mind. What if he tried playing on the North American servers? The thought was terrifying. The players there were known to be very competitive and fast-paced. He was afraid his slow, hesitant English would get him kicked off the team or made fun of. But he felt stuck in his learning, so he decided to take the risk. He changed his server settings and joined a game. He put on his headset, his heart pounding in his chest. For the first few games, he stayed completely silent. He just listened. The other players were talking constantly, using a lot of slang and abbreviations he didn't understand. "He's flanking left, pop your ult, GG, guys." It was like a completely different language, but Carlos was a good listener. He started to pick up the patterns, the key phrases. He realized he didn't need to have long, complex conversations. He just needed to communicate essential information. So he started small. He learned the English callouts for locations on the game map. He would press the talk button and say just one or two words: enemy, top left, or need healing. His teammates understood. They didn't care about his accent or his grammar. They just cared about the information. Slowly, his confidence grew. He started to use short sentences. "Watch out, there's a sniper behind you. Let's push together on my signal." He was still nervous, but he was communicating. He was practicing. His apartment was no longer a place of isolation. It had become his own personal English immersion environment. For 2 or 3 hours every night, he was living in an English-speaking world. He was solving problems, making friends, and even laughing and joking, all in English. His gaming hobby had become his language learning superpower. He had built his own English island. Carlos's story illustrates a vital concept. You don't have to live in an English-speaking country to immerse yourself in the language. In today's connected world, you can create your own immersive environment wherever you are. Immersion means surrounding yourself with English so that it becomes a normal part of your daily life. It's about making English not just something you study, but something you live. How can you build your own English island? You can start by making small changes to your existing habits. Do you check the news every morning in your native language? Try finding a US-based news website like the Associated Press or NPR and read one article in English instead. Do you love to cook? Find a recipe blog or a YouTube cooking channel in English and try making a new dish. Do you like to exercise? Find a fitness instructor on YouTube who gives instructions in English. The key is to integrate English into activities you already enjoy. When you do this, learning doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like fun. You are learning and practicing without even realizing it. The most powerful change you can make is to change the language settings on your devices. Change your phone, your computer, and your social media accounts to English. At first, it will be challenging, but you will quickly adapt and you will learn a huge amount of practical, everyday vocabulary. Let's do a small practice to help you start building your island. I want you to think of one activity that you do almost every day. It could be listening to music, checking social media, making your morning coffee, or your commute to work. Choose just one thing. Now, I want you to think about how you can do that one activity in English this week. If you chose listening to music, could you find an American artist you like and listen to one of their albums, maybe even looking up the lyrics? If you chose social media, could you follow a few American celebrities, news organizations, or influencers and read their posts? If you chose your commute, could you listen to an English podcast like this one instead of the radio in your native language? Choose one small achievable change and commit to doing it for the next 7 days. You are laying the first foundation stone of your English island. By creating this immersive environment, you are telling your brain that English is not a foreign subject. It is a part of your world. From creating an external world of English, let's look at how we can use our internal world. Let's meet Fatima, a mother from Egypt who had recently moved to a suburb in Texas with her family. Fatima's days were busy. She was taking care of her 2 young children, managing the house, and trying to navigate a new culture. She wanted to improve her English so she could talk to her children's teachers and feel more connected to her community. But she was very shy. Speaking to native speakers felt intimidating, and she didn't have much time for formal classes. She felt like she was in a trap. She needed to practice speaking to get better, but she was too scared to practice. One evening, as she was washing the dishes after dinner, an idea came to her. The house was quiet. The children were asleep. She was alone with her thoughts. What if she practiced speaking to herself? There was no one to judge her, no one to correct her. There was no pressure. So she started a new habit. Every night while she did her chores, she would narrate her day in simple English. At first, it was very basic. She would say things like, "Today, I go to supermarket. I buy milk. I buy bread. Children play in park. They are happy." The grammar was not perfect, and the vocabulary was limited, but it didn't matter. She was speaking. She was forming sentences. She was activating the language part of her brain. As she got more comfortable, her nightly stories became more detailed. She would try to add more description and express her feelings. Today, I went to the supermarket. It was very crowded. I bought milk, bread, and some beautiful red apples. Later, I took the children to the park. My daughter learned how to use the swing by herself. I felt so proud of her. This simple act of self-talk was incredibly powerful. It was like a private rehearsal. She was practicing retrieving vocabulary, building sentence structures, and organizing her thoughts in English, all in a safe, zero-stakes environment. She was building her fluency muscle in private so she would be stronger in public. After a few weeks of her nightly narrations, she had to go to a parent-teacher meeting for her son. In the past, this would have been a terrifying experience. She would have stayed silent, just nodding and smiling. But this time, something was different. The teacher asked her, "So, how is Omar enjoying first grade?" Without the usual panic, Fatima found herself answering, "He is enjoying very much. He likes his math class. He talks about his friends every day." The sentences came out more smoothly than she expected. They weren't perfect, but they were clear. She'd already practiced telling stories about her children's day so many times to herself that talking about it to the teacher felt familiar. It was a huge victory. Fatima's story teaches us the value of talking to yourself. It might sound strange, but self-talk is one of the most effective and low-pressure ways to practice speaking. When you talk to yourself, you are both the speaker and the listener. This allows you to practice forming thoughts into spoken words without any fear of judgment or misunderstanding. You can take your time, correct yourself, and experiment with new words and phrases. You can narrate your actions, as Fatima did. You can describe your surroundings. You can plan your day out loud in English. Okay, first I need to go to the post office, and then I have to stop at the grocery store. I should remember to buy eggs. You can even have conversations with yourself, imagining what you would say in a particular situation, like a job interview or ordering food at a restaurant. Let's try a very short self-talk practice right now. I want you to describe what you are doing at this exact moment in one simple English sentence. Say it out loud. For example, you might say, "I am listening to a podcast while I am driving." Or, "I am sitting on my sofa and drinking tea." Go ahead, say your sentence out loud. This is the beginning of a powerful habit. Try to catch yourself throughout the day and just say one sentence in English about what you are doing or thinking. You are turning your inner monologue into an English practice session. You are your own infinitely patient conversation partner. By making English the voice in your head, you are making it a true part of who you are. Now, let's explore a subtle but important aspect of sounding natural. Meet Liam, a young man from Ireland who had just moved to Boston. Liam had grown up learning British English. His English was excellent, but he quickly realized that American English had its own rhythm and style. One thing he noticed was the use of filler words. In his English classes back home, he was taught that using words like, like, and you know, was a sign of sloppy, uneducated speech. He was trained to speak in clean, complete sentences. But as he listened to his American colleagues and friends, he heard these filler words all the time. They used them constantly. An educated, intelligent project manager would say, "So I was thinking, maybe we should, push the deadline back a week, you know?" At first, Liam was confused. He thought it was just bad English, but then he started to listen more closely. He listened to a popular podcast hosted by a very articulate and successful journalist, and he noticed that even this professional speaker used filler words. He would say, "Well, the thing is, you have to look at the historical context." Liam realized that these weren't just mistakes. They were tools. They were serving a purpose. The and were not signs of stupidity. They were the sound of a person thinking. They were verbal placeholders that signaled to the listener, "I'm still talking. My brain is just searching for the next idea or the perfect word." It was a way to hold the floor in a conversation without awkward silence. Words like and you know were used to soften a statement, to check for understanding, or to create a more informal conversational tone. He realized that by avoiding these words completely, his own speech sounded a bit robotic and formal. When he needed a moment to think, he would just go completely silent. This silence was often interpreted by his American friends as him being finished with his thought, and they would jump in, interrupting him. He decided to experiment. The next time he was in a conversation and he needed a moment to gather his thoughts, instead of just pausing, he said, "Well, let me see." It felt strange, but it worked. The other person waited patiently. He started to incorporate some of these natural pauses and fillers into his speech in a conscious way. He didn't overuse them, but he learned to use them strategically. His conversations started to flow more naturally. He sounded less like he was reading from a textbook and more like he was simply talking. Liam's discovery is important. Fluency is not about speaking very fast with no pauses. True fluency includes the ability to pause and think in a natural way. In your native language, when you need a moment to think, you probably use filler words without even noticing. Learning to do this in English can make you sound more natural and can reduce the anxiety of feeling like you have to have the next word ready immediately. Common American English fillers include or used when searching for a word or idea. Used to soften a statement or as a general filler. You know. Used to check for agreement or to imply shared knowledge. Well. Used to start a sentence, often when thinking or hesitating. Let me see. Or let me think. Used to explicitly signal that you are thinking. The key is to use them appropriately and not to overuse them. Too many filler words can be distracting, but using them strategically can be a bridge that helps you move from one thought to the next without a jarring silence. Here's your practice. The next time you are speaking English and you feel your brain searching for a word, I want you to resist the urge to go silent. Instead, try using one of these simple bridges. You could say, "I think it's, very important." Or, "Well, the problem is." It will signal to your listener that you are still engaged and just need a second. It takes the pressure off and makes the conversation feel more real and human. Don't be afraid of the pause. Just learn how to fill it naturally. From the sounds we make with our mouths, let's consider the messages we send with our bodies. Isabel was a salesperson from France who had recently joined the U.S. team of her company. Her written English was flawless, and her vocabulary was extensive. Technically, she was fluent, but she was struggling to connect with her American clients. In meetings, she would present her product with perfect grammar and precise details, but her clients seemed distant and unengaged. Her sales numbers were low, and she was starting to lose her confidence. She focused intensely on her words. She would rehearse her presentations for hours, making sure every sentence was correct. Because she was concentrating so hard on the language, her body would become stiff. Her shoulders were tense. Her face was a mask of concentration, and she rarely smiled. She made little eye contact because she was busy in her head, planning her next perfect sentence. Her manager, a perceptive woman named Susan, sat in on one of her presentations. Afterwards, she gave Isabel some very unusual feedback. "Isabel," Susan said, "your English is perfect, but I want you to forget about the words for a little while. For your next presentation, I want you to focus on just two things, your smile and your hands." Isabel was shocked. Her smile? Her hands? What did that have to do with selling a product? But she trusted her manager, so she decided to try. That evening, she practiced her presentation in front of her hotel room mirror. But instead of focusing on the words, she focused on her body language. She practiced smiling at the beginning and end of key sentences. It felt fake at first, but she kept at it. She practiced using her hands to emphasize her points, using open, welcoming gestures, instead of keeping her arms crossed or stiff at her sides. She practiced making eye contact with her own reflection. The next day, she had a big presentation with a new client. She was nervous, but she remembered Susan's advice. As she began to speak, she forced herself to smile. She looked directly at the clients. When she described a feature of the product, she used her hands to show its size and shape. She focused less on finding the most perfect, sophisticated words and more on conveying enthusiasm and confidence through her body. Something incredible happened. The clients leaned forward. They started nodding. They asked questions. They smiled back at her. The atmosphere in the room changed from cold and formal to warm and collaborative. She made the sale. It was the biggest one of her career. Isabel learned a crucial lesson that day. Communication is not just about the words you say. A huge percentage of human communication is nonverbal. Your body language, your facial expressions, your tone of voice, and your eye contact can often say more than your words. When you are speaking a foreign language, this nonverbal communication is even more important. When you are relaxed, smiling, and open, people become more patient and understanding. They are more willing to help you if you struggle with a word. A warm and confident presence can make up for many small grammatical mistakes. On the other hand, if you are tense, nervous, and avoiding eye contact, people may feel uncomfortable, even if your English is perfect. Your anxiety can create a barrier. So part of training yourself to speak English is training your body to be a confident communicator. This is a practice you can do right now, wherever you are. I want you to check in with your body. Are your shoulders tense and pulled up towards your ears? If they are, let them drop. Are you frowning or holding tension in your jaw? Try to relax your face. Take a deep breath. Now, put a slight smile on your face. It doesn't have to be a huge grin, just a gentle, relaxed smile. Notice how that feels. A relaxed body and a pleasant facial expression can change your mindset. When you go into an English-speaking situation, try to adopt this relaxed, open posture. Smile, make eye contact, use your hands. It takes the pressure off your words and allows your true personality to shine through. You are not just an English speaker. You are a person connecting with another person. Let your body show that. For our final story, let's meet Mr. Chen. Mr. Chen was 65 years old and had recently retired from his job as an accountant in Taiwan. He moved to California to live with his son's family. His greatest joy was his 2 young grandchildren, who were born and raised in the United States. They were bright, energetic kids who chattered away in perfect, fast-paced English. Mr. Chen loved them dearly, but he couldn't understand them. They would try to show him their drawings or tell him about their day at school, and he could only smile and nod. A wall of language stood between him and his grandchildren. Determined to break down this wall, mister, Chen decided to learn English. He bought textbooks and tried to study for hours at a time, just like he had in school 50 years ago. But he found it exhausting. The grammar rules were confusing, and he couldn't remember the vocabulary. After a week of intense study, he felt overwhelmed and wanted to give up. He thought, "I'm too old for this. My brain doesn't work like it used to." He talked to his son about his struggles. His son gave him some simple advice. "Dad," he said, "don't try to climb the whole mountain in one day. Just take one small step every day. Don't study for 2 hours once a week. Study for 15 minutes every single day. Consistency is more important than intensity." Mr. Chen decided to try this new approach. He put away the big, intimidating textbooks. He decided his goal was just 15 minutes of English every morning. That felt manageable. Every day with his morning tea, he would do his 15 minutes. Some days he used a language learning app on his phone, playing simple vocabulary games. Other days he would take a children's book from his granddaughter's shelf and slowly read one page, using a dictionary to look up words he didn't know. Some days he would just watch 15 minutes of an American cartoon with his grandchildren, just listening to the voices. There were many days when he felt like he was making no progress at all. He still couldn't have a conversation. He still felt lost when his family spoke English around the dinner table. But he stuck with his routine. 15 minutes. Every single day. It became a habit like drinking his morning tea. Months went by. One afternoon, his 7-year-old granddaughter, Lily, ran up to him, holding a piece of paper. She had drawn a picture of a big yellow house with a red door and a happy sun smiling in the sky. "In the past, mister." Chen would have just smiled and patted her on the head. But this time, something different happened. Words came to his mind. He looked at her, pointed to the drawing, and said slowly but clearly, "Lily, that is a beautiful house." "Is that our house?" Lily's eyes lit up. "Yes, Grandpa." "That's our house. And that's you, and that's me." She pointed to 2 stick figures holding hands. Mr. Chen's heart filled with a joy he couldn't describe. It was a simple conversation, just a few sentences. But it was everything. He had crossed the bridge. He had connected. His small, consistent daily effort had built that bridge piece by piece. Mr. Chen's story is perhaps the most important one of all. It teaches us the power of consistency. The brain learns best through regular, repeated exposure. Cramming for hours once in a while is not effective for long-term learning. It's like going to the gym for 5 hours on a Saturday and then doing nothing for the rest of the month. You won't build muscle that way. You build muscle by going for 30 minutes 3 or 4 times a week. Learning to speak English is a marathon, not a sprint. You need to find a sustainable pace. 15 minutes a day is far more powerful than 2 hours on a weekend. Those small daily investments add up over time. They build strong, lasting neural pathways in your brain. So this is my final and most important practice for you. I want you to find your 15 minutes. Look at your daily schedule and find a small pocket of time that you can dedicate to English every single day. Maybe it's during your morning commute. Maybe it's during your lunch break. Maybe it's right before you go to bed. Protect that time. Make it non-negotiable. And in those 15 minutes, do one small, focused activity. It could be shadowing a podcast clip. It could be narrating your actions. It could be learning one new language chunk. It could be reading one page of a book out loud. The activity itself is less important than the consistency of doing it. If you can build this habit of daily practice, you will succeed. There will be days when you feel like you are not improving. There will be days when you feel frustrated. But if you keep showing up day after day, you will build your bridge. Just like Mr. Chen, one day you will have a conversation that you couldn't have before, and you will realize how far you have come. We have been on quite a journey together today. We met Maria the baker and learned to be patient with our brain's silent period. We met Leo the guitarist and discovered that our mouth is an instrument that needs physical training. We got lost in New York with Kenji and found the secret of thinking in English instead of translating. We worked a shift with Sophia at the coffee shop and learned the power of collecting phrases and chunks. We stepped onto the stage with David and practiced shadowing to find the music of the language. We sat in a meeting with Anya, the engineer, and gave ourselves permission to be imperfect. We built an English island with Carlos, the gamer, and immersed ourselves in the language. We stood in the kitchen with Fatima and unlocked the power of talking to ourselves. We learned from Liam how to use pauses and fillers to sound more natural. We practiced with Isabel and saw how our body language can speak volumes. And finally, we had tea with Mr. Chen and embraced the quiet superpower of daily consistency. Each of these stories holds a key to unlocking the English that is inside of you. Speaking is a skill. And like any skill, it improves with the right kind of practice. It's not just about what you know, it's about what you do. It's about training your brain to think in new ways and training your mouth to make new sounds. It's about being brave, being patient, and being consistent. The journey to fluent, confident speech is yours to take. You have the map now. You have the tools. Start with one story, one technique that resonated with you the most, and put it into practice this week. You can do this. If you found this story-filled journey helpful and want to continue learning with us, please subscribe to English in Advance and turn on the notification bell. That way, you will never miss our next adventure in English. Your support helps us create more podcasts just for you, designed to make learning feel less like studying and more like living. Until next time, keep practicing, keep making mistakes, and keep telling your own story. In English. Thank you for listening.